Former Statistician-General Dr. Pali Lehohla says South Africa has sunk to a new low as a march against illegal foreign nationals begins. Video has been circulating on social media about a mop-up operation aimed at removing illegal foreign nationals and South Africans selling goods without permits at Bara taxi rank in Soweto. Organizers of the march are calling on some political parties to help shut down shops owned and operated by illegal foreigners. Former Statistician-General Pali Lehohla joins us now to share his thoughts on this development. Good to have you with us tonight, sir. And we heard yesterday coming from the ANC, Lehohla, the ANC now has decided that the ANC should be leading the debate around the immigration policy in the country because they are concerned about certain elements who are reflecting an anti-African stance in a way. Is it too little too late? Many are saying they should not be joining the debate. In fact, they should have long been using the instruments that are in government to deal with the issue of illegal immigration.
Yes, I think the question of sporadic I wouldn't say attacks, but the sporadic interactions that are unpalatable with foreign nationals have been a matter in South Africa for quite a while. And others dealt with it differently. Amongst this, I could talk about Premier Sbu Ndebele in KwaZulu-Natal, where, followed by Zelinkise, they really created a framework for managing the tensions. That was around the first attacks of foreigners in 2007. We also know that this came again where Nigeria even sent a Boeing around here to come and lift up the Nigerians. And around the same time, President Mugabe had died. And naturally, President, who was then the chair of one of the constitutive bodies of the AU, was going to speak at the funeral. And with that background, he was backlash. But he dealt with this matter very magnanimously, or rather very forthrightly, and he was received with magnanimity by the mourners in Zimbabwe. But you would have hoped that there is a process by which South Africa pays attention to these matters of people who are not necessarily South Africans, and in particular immigrants. And it's a difficult thing to deal with, but I think we have not used the instruments that are available to deal with these matters in a way that is not antagonistic. But I think because of corruption and everything, porous borders and almost everything collapsing, we are found very much wanting. So the question is the aim at the right time? I think it's coming too late. I mean, it is horrible in the way it has dealt with so many other things where they have experiments to deal with this. So the extent to which citizens rise on this matter is not around the immigration issue. It's a whole range of other issues that citizens are saying, we want our country back and the government back for ourselves. Yeah. So I think it's part and parcel of that rubric of failure.
I mean, there's no question that the issue of employment is a challenge for locals here in South Africa, certainly. But does this in any way justify these movements that are coming up? And is there a justification, for example, for movements that are calling on citizens, in particular in this time, to go to places and verify the credentials of those who are working there who would be immigrants?
Well, we have an infrastructure called the Labor Department, and they have an inspectorate that has to do that. Why do citizens have to do it? It's because the inspectorate is not doing it. We have municipalities and employees of municipalities to deliver services. Citizens have to mow the grass and everything, which is a good thing. But the key question that we have to ask is, what happens to those that we have assigned the responsibility, including the resources that they have to deploy there? Now that we find that we have to do those kinds of things. it is critical that citizens participate as an extension of administration. But here, when administration has been found not there, and citizens have to be there themselves on the cutting of rails and so on, very deplorable. It's a serious failure. I mean, the party has spent time there, but among other things that dominated the discussions, or at least as we are fed by the media, has been around the issues around Minister Sisulu. And it's very tiring to find that each time the party meets, it's meeting on a crisis for the last 11 years. So the issue around immigrants, and that it is wanting to be part of that, it has to. But it stinks when you look at citizens have to rise, and only then those who are responsible for this task later. Where have they been sleeping all along? The question. And when citizens rise in the way they do, it certainly will have a serious backlash. Right. It may get out of hand. Right. That's the danger.
Now, considering, I mean, your reflections, you're saying this would disrupt the already rickety, very young Africa trade agreement in a sense. I mean, does that not maybe indicate that the broader region should be waking up to begin to use instruments like the Africa Pre-Review mechanism to really compensate?
Well, indeed, I mean, President Mbeki created all these instruments through the AU Constitutive Act, where AU created all this ATRM, NAPAD, and all this, and then set the motion for Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It's taken a little bit of time, and that's the instrument that we should use. And the heads of states must actually confront the issue around how they deal with their citizens. Because in part, it's utter neglect, both in South Africa and other parts of the continent, where citizens are ignored. I mean, you cannot have 46% unemployment and still say you are neglecting the prime responsibility to dealing with poverty, inequality, and unemployment. I think we are failing dismally in that regard. And I don't think the policies that are being espoused now and into the future are going to resolve that. Because they are a mix of things that do not address those things. Part of the problem that we see in municipalities and all lack of services is in part because of the policies that are not geared towards addressing citizens' aspirations. So is the case of illegal immigrants and migration more generally. So the issue of focusing on Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is so crucial. It's at the heartbeat of this. And when there are actions as they are now, that framework is susceptible to being disrupted. A solution to many of our problems.
What could be the solution here? We are seeing, for example, the Department of Aaron Motsoaledi's department, Home Affairs, I nearly forgot the name now, beginning, for example, to wake up now and saying, oh, by the way, the ZEP dispensation needs to now be cancelled, and they've been quiet about it. Many people are applauding the move by the minister, saying he needs to be supported in this particular move. I mean, are reviews of that nature of our immigration policy going to help in managing this situation?
Indeed, I mean, we have well-designed policies around how people can come into South Africa, stay in South Africa, get employment in South Africa, surely, and also get asylum in South Africa, including how you come in illegally because perhaps you are being persecuted, and then you jump into South Africa, then you work on an asylum arrangement. But there is also an unquestionable coming in where people will find that they've been printing illegal documents according foreign nationals, allowing, undermining the government itself, by the civil service, by everybody involved, including those who actually know. It was only when the citizens movement by large arose that we realized that these people are known and it's easy to identify them. But the serious problem that that leads to is the consequences and the backlash that comes from different countries, which will make tensions in South Africa and the African continent very, very real. And those things need to be handled fairly carefully. Yeah. But the complete disregard for execution of policies by civil servants and others is deplorable. And the question of unemployment in South Africa, it's really deplorable. There are ways in which this can be done and dealt with. But government is not ready to deal with that matter and confront it. And it's getting worse by the day. I mean, at the end of the meeting, I was looking at the social compact. I said, but what is a social compact? Yes, of course, it's something. But it says absolutely nothing around what are the ingredients of the compact. Yeah. An ingredient of the compact would be South Africans. Yeah. By year X, we'll have created so many jobs. We have reduced unemployment by this much. Yeah. We will have reduced inequality by this much, and we'll have reduced poverty by this much. We'll have created compacting among citizens, and we'll be looking at Africa as a contributing factor to all these things. In the absence of those quantifications, this is just talk. So this is the problem, that another talk around social compacting that doesn't have any indicators. Just like the NDP, which had aspirations, but didn't have a planning system to execute it. I see us in that rut throughout and through and through. And South Africans will be sold this dummy all the time. It's really very, very discomforting when the arc driver of the Rainbow Nation passes on. And sadly, one of the journalists said, the ray has been pulled out of the rainbow. And this is the situation that we are in. I think we need seriousness around this, and the seriousness that we need here around quantification. We should be able to say, by 2030, unemployment will be 13 or 14%, because we have created this number of jobs. At the moment, there's nothing that indicates that. So South Africans have to ask difficult questions to the President and the Minister of Finance around the State of the Nation address and the budget speech as to what will that deliver by 2030. By design, in those speeches and that, only 1 million jobs will have been created by 2030. The question is, can South Africans accept that? Will the Parliament rise and applaud that? We are in such a terrible state that unless the targets are stated so that everybody can compact and move towards those targets and make sacrifices to get to those. Short of that, a failed state is on the horizon.
Let's take a break. We'll continue in a moment.
A failed South Africa is a failed continent.
We'll come back in a moment with the former Statistician-General there, Dr. Pali Lehohla, as we reflect more on this question of a social compact and what actually is required to manage the migration situation that is now turning into these movements that we are seeing, of course, in various parts of South Africa. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus on Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405. Thanks for staying on with us tonight. We are in conversation with the former Statistician-General Pali Lehohla, of course, talking issues of migration policy in the country and what needs to be addressed. On that question of the social compact, Dr. Lehohla, there seems to be this move to want to rally South Africans around the sentiment of Pan-Africanism. So they're saying, no, this tone that we're taking is anti-Pan-Africanist. Is there a sense that communities can have a social compact around what Pan-Africanism really is? And could that be a solution to addressing this kind of sentiment that is going on?
Well, sentiment is important, but the sentiment has to be undergirded by real economics and respect of the Constitution and respect of different laws. And Pan-Africanism is very, very crucial. So we are where we are because we are not Pan-Africanist in our approach to our lives. Colonialism broke us apart and everything. So we have a common history and a common destination and a common solution to the kinds of things that Africa finds itself in. But when we raise and rise to that sentiment, it should be anchored in the reality of fighting shoulder to shoulder, not one of trying to escape responsibility for being irresponsible. I think government has been very irresponsible in dealing with all these matters and allowing it to degenerate to the level where it has been. I mean, how people have been picking people that they say, well, you sell drugs. We know you do. When people come and say, we know you are cutting the rail line. How difficult would it have been for a government dressed with so much power to execute these things to have failed? Now, the government has to walk the code of why did it become so irresponsible? Because they can't come as Johnny come lately to come and do the right thing. It is their duty to do so. But having not done that, cannot give them uncritical license to come as Johnny come lately, because they'll do that again and again. I'm not suggesting that these movements can actually sustain themselves. They are very difficult. Legitimate governments that are actually, and the government must rise to that occasion. Yeah. But what comes out of Zondo, what comes everywhere else, suggests that if we are to trust that that can happen, then we will be like believing that Father Christmas brings some goodies.
How can we use, I hope the line will hold there, it's deteriorating very quickly. How can we use instruments like the Africa Free Trade Agreement in harnessing this sense of Pan-Africanism, even though you suggest
Africa
that...
continental free trade.
Yeah.
Your line broke a bit.
Yeah, I'm saying even though you suggest that the current movements could possibly be undermining that particular program.
No, I think they show the danger of not using that instrument. I think that's a wake-up call for all of us. And we know that that instrument, the women from Zimbabwe coming with their goods to come and sell them here in South Africa, buying goods from South Africa, trekking with them and then selling them in Zimbabwe. That's what Africa Continental Free Trade is. It's all about facilitating movement of goods and services. But above all, it is about making sure that they are manufactured by Africans in Africa. Ali Mazrui says Africans consume what they don't produce and produce what they don't consume. I think we are waking up to that we produce what we consume and consume what we produce. For instance, one of the things that Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement should be able to deal with is the differentiated price level indices that we see, where the price level is relatively high. And because of that high price level index associated with the Angola price levels and so on, SADC cannot trade competitively with East Africa region, where the price level indices are very low. Some of the things that the East African region has done, which pushes the prices lower, that is Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, is that any call that is made, a call, that is a telephone call made on the cell phone in that region, is like a local call across those countries. The SADC region is not agreeing on those things. So there are many things that have to be done to ensure that we actually start moving together, and the use of data, such as the International Comparisons Program, which says what Africans are producing and what they are consuming, in what quantity, at what cost, actually is what we do to compute the price level index. And if we look at the Maghreb, Egypt and so on, and Ethiopia, the price level indices are very low. We are likely not to attract the types of investments in Southern Africa that can be attracted by the East Africa, the Horn, Maghreb, and East Africa region. So we need to use these instruments, and only then, when we are seriously using these instruments, can we resolve as well these problems of migration. When those instruments are not on the table, then Father Christmas is talking to young children who see goods and believe that Father Christmas will come again next year. This is my problem, that in the absence of seriousness of using evidence and planning systems and modeling, I don't see how we can actually escape this.
Yeah.
And at the moment, what I've seen is the absence of seriousness in the evidence of ushering what should be done. And to expect that there will be any different tomorrow, is believing in dreams.
What do you say to the South Africans in Diepkloof and Soweto and everywhere else who have now taken to the streets saying we're doing Operation Dudula to bring them to a sense of understanding here of this kind of situation that we could possibly be looking at if this gets out of control? Because you are still dealing with a government that doesn't give you a sense that they will tomorrow, grow this economy, get a handle of things, get people employed. We were having a conversation around borrowing 630 billion rands in borrowing, some of it coming from international places.
That's another thing that is very disturbing. That at the one level, we are arguing that debt to GDP ratio, especially if the expenditure is for consumptive consumption, it increases our debt to GDP ratio. Yet we go and borrow and say, what are we going to do? We are going to put that money from the IMF in this consumptive expenditure. So who is fooling who here? The issue around own resources and working off our own balance sheets is something that we actually have to sit down and say, we are going to do it. But at the same time as we do that, particularly the pensions, we got to make sure that those silly, dirty fingers that go into the till are ripped off. We don't want to have anybody next to that till. And in part, I think the Treasury is faced with this kind of dilemma of a failed state. So they have to go and canvass the IMF and the World Bank to try and help them govern us so that we don't steal. This is a very terrible situation. And by so doing, they want to go and we go and borrow denominated currencies with a fluctuating currency like ours. Are we not increasing our debt to GDP ratio? Of course, the borrowing is so minuscule that it is meaningless, and to even be talking about it, it's a waste of time. 2.1 trillion in savings from pensions. And if we don't use our own savings to invest, then who should we expect to do so? And then we go and borrow. Because if we use our own savings, we say the international community will lose confidence in us by using our own resources. What kind of logic is that? So there are many things that don't make serious economic logic that we are doing that, for me, don't give me confidence that we have the seriousness and the urgency to solve the problems of this rich country with poor people.
Dr. Lehohla, I appreciate your time. Unfortunately, that's where we have to leave it for tonight. Thank you very much for coming on. Former Statistician-General there, Dr. Pali Lehohla, raising some concerns around that particular management of our immigration situation in the country, but also what the powers that be are not doing and waking up too late to do what they should have done a long time ago.